Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 201 with Hilary, Saxton and Bob Andersen. You're in for a bit of a treat as usual. Today we're talking about managing the construction process effectively, and we'll walk through the 5 steps of that process, and you're going to learn quite a bit, my friends. Jump on into this episode. Hello and welcome to episode 201. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Roll on 300.
Bob actually said that at the last take because full exclusion, your mic's not in front of your mouth and you have to move it. We actually did the full podcast episode and then realised the audio wasn't on, and then we have to do it a second time, and that makes us really happy, doesn't it?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Strike 2.
We're like, oh my goodness. Anyway, this episode 201, it's going to be a fabulous one. Today the book goes to Craig Moyles. Craig, I spoke to you this week. He bought our feasibility calculator. How good? How good is that? And looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday when Bob does the lunchtime session. So next Tuesday we've got that free lunchtime session on financing. What is it on, Bob?
Yeah, property development finance.
Property development finance. There you go. And so that's a free event. If you wanted to come along to that, you just need to register to receive the Zoom link. There'll be a link below. Otherwise, head to our website, propertymastermind.com.au, and you can, of course, register there for it. But if you don't have the link, you won't be able to get it. So you will need to register not just immediately before, because there's a whole sequence that happens, like, it goes through the system and then you get the email. But it'll be a fabulous event and you'll want to be on that. So Craig's coming to that. Be good to see you. By then you will have the book. That will be fun. And also we talked about coming along to our 3-day workshop, which is in September this year. So that's the 19th, 20th and 21st of September. Anyone interested in attending that event, reach out, find out about it. It's phenomenal. So many joint ventures happen there. You look for money partners, you might find them there. You have fabulous education. There are drinks every night. That's the highlight for me. And it's just 3 days of amazing learning, networking, and rubbing shoulders with the right people. So if you want to come along to that, we will look forward to seeing you there, or just reach out for more information if you would like. Anyway, let's talk about, Bob, what's your tip for the day? Was it about Mother's Day?
No.
Oh.
Haven't got one on Mother's Day.
Well, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Yep.
Yeah, for last Sunday. I got a new watch. How's this? My kids bought me this beautiful gold watch. So lovely. Anyway, Bob.
I got nothing.
Well, you're not a mother. You get something.
That's probably why.
You get something on Father's Day. Bob, what's your tip for the day?
There's different types of jalapenos I found out.
Mm.
I like a little bit of spice, but I like mild, right? So there's these jalapenos I get that are pretty mild and they're nice and they're tasty and they're mild. I think I got the wrong ones because I just had some and just about blew the top off my head. They'll be good for you.
Yeah, I can't. How did you get 2 tips in one day? This is a different tip from take 1.
This is a slightly different tip from take 1.
There you go.
Yep.
Wasn't expecting the jalapeno tip.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous property development tip there. Be careful of the jalapenos you purchase.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Be careful.
Be careful. Hey, let's talk, Bob, managing the construction process effectively. We're going to go through those 5 stages, being 1, the pre-construction planning, 2, selecting the right builder and contracts, 3, on-site management and quality control, 4, budget timeline management, and 5, final handover and compliance. But before we get started on this podcast was inspired by just a phone call we had from somebody who thought that they could just Google property development, and nothing wrong with Googling property development. If that's your jam, go for it. But they found themselves in a bit of a pickle, and which will affect them financially, which is really sad. By the time they reach out to us, the situation's not great. They're just looking for someone to rescue them. And Bob, what was their main problem? What was the thing that they did wrong?
Pick the wrong builder.
Yeah. And what did that mean for them? What's that going to cost them?
Well, a lot of angst. Quality of the work's bad. Overtime. Rectifications, probably out of pocket in terms of the construction and the construction time, the construction dollars. They'll still make a profit, nowhere near what they were going to make, But yeah, some big construction mistakes in there, all starting with the wrong builder.
So that's all part of managing the construction process effectively. Hence the reason for this week's podcast. It's a timely reminder for people how important it is to work through every part of your property development properly. Don't wing it, don't guess it. Everything actually matters. And there probably were other mistakes on the way that they missed anyway. But let's start by, I think, for you, just explaining the difference between a builder and a developer, because that's something that people do get confused on. And we're going to talk a lot about the builder and the developer, you being the developer, or the person listening being the developer. So can you explain the difference for people that don't quite get it? A lot of you are thinking, yeah, I get it, but a lot of people don't get it.
Yeah, some people think you have to be a builder to be a developer, which is certainly not the case. In fact, most developers are not builders, yet some builders are also developers. So as a developer, we engage a builder to do our construction. So from the very beginning, where they clear the site, start setting up till they finish and deliver us our finished product, that's the role of the builder. It's only part of the role of being a property development. If you think of everything that comes before that, we've gone out, we've found a site that stacks up, we've done our feasibility, we've done our due diligence, we've been structured correctly, we've purchased it, we've got our development permit, our building permit or construction certificate, and handled our finance. Then we got the building phase, and then we got the marketing and selling and settling. So there's a lot to property development other than just the build. So that's why we don't need to be a builder. We can engage a builder, and that's what most property developers do. However, there are some builders who have become or want to become, as we've seen a lot lately, property developers. And so they're good at that piece in the middle, if you like, of they're not too bad at design and they're good at building. Well, hopefully they are, but they come up short on a lot of the other stuff. So builders need to learn how to be developers as well. Developers don't need to learn how to be builders.
It's ironic at the moment we have mentoring students signing up that are builders. It's a thing right now, and for different reasons as well. Some of them are doing it because they're just sick of dealing with people, and that comes up. That's one of the reasons that it pretty much falls out of everyone's mouth. Tired of working with people being so pedantic or hard to work with. And I think the other one, which somebody I spoke to last week, the week before, I think, and Ben, he was just mentioning that for him, the whole strain of COVID and not getting product and the pressure it puts on them, and then just realizing that they can make so much more money being a developer, then switching to that role. And as we know, some of them will keep building, and some will just go straight to developing and not even bother with the building, because there is that little bit of a thing when you're a builder getting finance for your own developments, isn't it? It's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, financiers treat builder developers, and that's what we'll call them, a builder who's a developer, a little bit differently from a developer. And it's more of a risk management thing. So they expect the builder to make a profit out of the building part and a profit out of the development part. Developers like myself who are not builders and don't want to be, we have to make a certain profit out of being a developer, and then the builder, another person, makes a profit out of being the building. So if you're both, you're still expected to make a profit out of both of those, both as a builder and as a developer. There's a bit of risk involved for the financier too, because normally there's two separate parties. So you've got the developer and you've got the builder. Now, if something happened to either party, for instance, let's say the developer, something happened to them. I don't know, we're involved in a bad car accident, heaven forbid. Well, the financier can quickly get a project manager in to do their role. So the builder keeps building, project manager steps in. Alternatively, if something happened to the builder, same thing, might have had a car accident, can't build at the moment, you might have to get another builder in there. But when a builder developer, something happens, they lose both. They lose the developer and the builder because they're the same person. And so they consider that a higher risk. And so they do look pretty closely at builders who are developers.
That's interesting. So they don't like to replace both. It's easier to replace one. That makes absolute sense. Isn't it funny? This podcast, we've got the same idea and plan we're going to work through, and we've gone off piste already. But I'm like, oh, that's really interesting, because that is interesting stuff for me, I think, anyway. I mean, if you can imagine how much property development talk we have in a day, when I have a conversation that's newish one. I mean, I did know a little bit why, but I didn't know that particular reason. So there you go. Righty, Bob. So that's the difference between a builder and a developer. So let's start with the key steps. Let's start with number one. And this is managing the process effectively. So for the pre-construction and planning, what can go wrong if you don't manage it effectively?
Well, the pre-construction, the planning is really about getting all the plans right. So initially we'll get a development permit, and then we'll get a building permit or construction certificate. So that's pre-construction. But leading into the construction, which pretty much starts at the tender stage when you're starting to talk to builders, getting prices from builders, selecting a builder, entering into a contract, and then ultimately construction, is to have detailed plans and to have decided on everything. It's really important. That's what I like to do. And not do things on the run. Don't say, oh, look, I'll sort this out during construction. I'll work out, the specifications during construction. No, do it all early. So get all your detailed plans done, get all your specifications right down to, your brands and your models and everything. That'll all go into the package that the builder quotes on. So the builder can quote a tight price. And also what you don't want is to be changing things during construction. It's a nightmare for the builder. It's a nightmare for you too, changing stuff. And the message doesn't always get through. And so the perfect scenario is get everything set first. Don't make any changes during construction.
And then if there are changes made, it really becomes about communication, making sure that the builder's talking to his subbies, the tradies, everyone knows what's going on, and that it is written down and all there is a paperwork process follow through, so nothing gets missed. It can't come to the end. You can't get to the end or halfway through and say, I didn't ask for those. It would be like, no, we had that conversation. Here they are here.
Yeah. Document it. Everything has to be documented. Any changes to the plans need to be documented, marked up in red, signed off by both parties, agreed, everything in writing, like with changes particularly, because it's not just between the developer and the builder. The builder may then have to pass certain things on to his subcontractors. Certain changes have to be made as well. And so he needs to communicate with them. So, you've got developer talking to builder talking to subcontractor, sometimes the head contractor talking to his subby. So you got all this communication going on every time there's a change.
Chinese whispers, Bob.
Imagine whispers.
Chinese whispers, it could just get out of control. I want to change the door handles to blue. And next thing it's, who knows, what could that be? Anything.
Could be anything. So, hence the least number of changes, the better.
I remember you mentioning in the last podcast that we're re-recording that we talked about when on the odd time you mentioned the word naughty builders, where they make changes without telling the owner because they might have a cheaper way or we can use these instead and we save ourselves a bit of money. What happens when that happens?
Depends what they change. They shouldn't change anything. They shouldn't change anything in the specifications unless they can't get hold of that particular product, in which case they have a conversation with the developer, they come up with an alternative product, they both agree, document it, sign off on it. But what some naughty builders do is they don't necessarily build a plan. And that can be done for a few reasons. Expedite things, save money. They could save money by changing something and therefore make more money, right? So the contract price doesn't change because they don't tell anybody. And so that they can't do that under the terms of their contract, under the building code, they can't do that, So, but, a naughty builder might change some things and not let the developer know what the changes are.
Have you ever had changes happen to you and you found out later or you didn't know about them?
I've seen it happen with other people. I've changed things, not that I recommend you do. I just said, please don't, but I have changed things sometimes because you have to. But I learned very early in the piece, like to get that documented as well and not rely on anything verbal. So it hasn't been a big problem for myself, but I've seen others. In fact, there's a program I watch sometimes on YouTube. It's a building inspector. It's a guy in Melbourne, I think, although he does do some building inspections in the state. So he's got a channel there where he particularly shows bad construction. I mean, it wouldn't be too exciting if he was showing examples of good construction. That's nice, but it's not, it's not exciting. So he shows bad builders and builders behaving badly, trying to throw him off site and all sorts of things. But bad construction, it's good to see. And I do make the comment, most builders are good. It's only a minority of builders that are naughty ones, but they're the ones that get all the publicity. They're the ones you see on the current affair programs, at 6:30 at night or whatever. They're the ones that make this guy's program. And some of the corners they cut are terrible, and the quality of some of the work's terrible.
So we actually had this conversation on the last podcast. So when you said this, I was really, oh my goodness, I can't believe that you watch property development bloopers in your sort of spare time, because Bob's pretty stock standard fishing. YouTube, you go to a YouTube channel, it's fishing, it's UFC, and it's American politics. And now I've just found out you also watch property development. So from somebody who's been doing it for
building inspections, to be specific, and often it's just a person who's having a house built by a builder. It's not always like proper developments, and the home builder has struck problems with the builder, and he's called in the building inspector, who's found that a lot of things aren't built to code. The builder's been paid for stuff he's never done. Like it's interesting, and yeah, I mean, if you watch too much of that, you'll get the wrong idea. You think all builders are bad, but they're not. Of course, they're only a minority, but you have to be aware and choose the right builder.
And in your experience, from developing for pretty much your entire life, for 40 years, you've been developing, and you've done over 1.3 billion yourself. Yeah, that's the development. That's the level that you've done, and so many. How many times have you come across, or how many times have you experienced in all of that time a bad builder?
Oh, a couple of times, but not always bad builders. Sometimes just bad subbies. I had a featured brick wall once, and it's quite a long time ago. And the builder was really busy. What he got his apprentice onto the bricklaying. Well, when you say his apprentice, I think it was actually his labourer. So the guy that should be mixing the mud and barrowing bricks, he got him in there laying bricks. And when you had a really good look along the joints. So the joints are the horizontal part between two bricks, and the perps are the verticals, the vertical lines between two bricks. And you sit back, and the perps went on top of the perps, and the joints, the long runs, were a little bit wriggly. And also, when you look really side on, it wasn't a dead set flat wall. There was, sort of a bit of movement in it. So I made him pull it down. So he had to pull it down, clean the bricks up, and lay it properly. Fortunately, I got to him that day. When it was, I mean, the mortar was going off, but it was still okay to knock it down, and it was braced, but it had to come down. That's one example. That doesn't happen too often.
No,
but it can happen.
That's another story I didn't know. So today I've had 2 new stories about Bob Andersen. Who would have thought? Anyways, Bob. So that's the pre-construction and planning. Let's talk about selecting the right builder and contracts. What do you need to, and I know we have covered off on this on a few other podcasts, but it's really good for people to hear things over and over. And the best thing to learn is something you already know. If you don't know that one, you should. So what is the best thing that you can do when it comes to selecting a builder and also with the contract?
Yeah, so 2 separate things there. With the builder, obviously you want to choose a builder who's qualified for that particular type of building, who's had a lot of experience in that building. For instance, if you're building 4 townhouses and you've got a builder who's just built houses but wants to step up to doing townhouses, let him experiment somewhere else. So someone, if you're doing 3 or 4 townhouses, someone who's done lots of townhouses of that size and nature. So the type of building is important, obviously licensed for that, but I mean, that'll come out in the due diligence. And referrals are good. So referrals from people who have either used the builder or perhaps an architect who knows the builder and has looked at the builder's work or whatever. And so someone who comes well recommended. Don't pick a builder purely on price and no other reason. I mean, yes, there might be a good builder who has the best price. That's great. But don't make price your sole criteria for choosing a builder, even though it's an important factor. And do your due diligence as well on that builder. Talk to referees, have a look at his work, go to another site that he's building at the moment and have a look at that. Talk to, get some subcontractor referees, some financial referees. You can do credit checks and that. If you're doing something bigger than a house where the financier insists on having a quantity surveyor involved in the project to sign off every time the builder claims money. Sometimes, particularly on commercial finance, the financier will want a quantity surveyor in there to sign off, make sure the builder's done the work. Not necessarily the quality of the work, but they have actually done what they've said they've done. And so that can be a bit of protection as well, because the financier will ask the quantity surveyor to do checks on the builder as well. And you should do your own. But yeah, choosing the right builder is important.
It's interesting you brought up in that chat that you just had there, due diligence on your builder. And I keep reflecting back to the last podcast things you said, but you were talking about the financier doing their own due diligence on the builder as well. So have they always done that? Is that a normal thing, or has that sort of stepped up a little bit more recent times?
It has stepped up more, in the last 3 or 4 years. It's quite normal and has been for as long as I ever remember. If you're doing a slightly bigger project, more than a house, and you're using commercial finance that banks typically, or particularly if the loans say more than $1 million, they like to incorporate a quantity surveyor in, and that's good. In the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of builders go broke. The post-COVID thing, or during COVID, when prices rapidly went up, quite a few builders quoted a price that they couldn't match, they couldn't meet, and you do that on 3 projects, you could be out the back door. So there have been a lot of builders go broke in the last 3 years, and so financiers for some time now have been really interested in how solid is the builder, because that's a risk. It's a risk for a developer, but it's a risk for the financier. It's a risk that you can overcome, if a builder went broke, for instance, but it'll cost money. And so financiers have been looking a lot more at builders. In fact, some financiers ask for financials from builders as though they were going for a home loan to actually check their finances. And that's something new. Not every financier does it, but the last couple of years some have.
And the good thing about that is, if the developer, maybe you're reasonably new to development and that's something you weren't aware of, at least it's another check in place, isn't it? Because, it is ultimately the developer's responsibility to ensure that they're choosing the right people to work with. And in this day and age, as we see every day, it's very easy to create a company, market yourself on the internet, and be anything you want to be. You can be. You can say you're a property development educator. You can say, you can. It's that easy. There's a new one up today I saw somewhere. But you can also say you can have a website that says you've done a lot of things that you haven't done. And so if you do your homework by having the conversations with other people that have used that builder, and you do it well, and then on top of that, the financier's doing it, you would hope that you have at least lessened the chance of picking a lemon, shall we say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Bob, that's the builder. Let's talk about the builder's contract.
Yeah, so building contracts typically, look, most builders are going to use one of the industry contracts. Most builders are either a member of the HIA, the Housing Industry Association, or the Master Builders of whatever state. And obviously, it goes without saying that those contracts are a bit in favour of the builder because they're a building industry contract. They're the most common ones. HIA Master Builders. There's also another type of contract called the Australian Standards. It could be, it's got different numbers, AS 3000, 4000, or Civil Works 2124, different numbers. They're the fairest contract, the Australian Standards one. And you may or may not be able to convince your builder to use an Australian Standard contract. They might just basically insist on using one of the industry standard ones, and that's okay. They're not bad. They're just in favour of the builder. But of course, with any contract, you can, by mutual agreement, change the contract. So you can negotiate terms. If you think there's some terms on the contract that are not fair or onerous on you, you can negotiate with the builder to either alter them or even strike them out altogether. And that can be done on the contract and initialed. So I don't think I've ever signed a straight contract and just accepted it the way it is. There's some clauses that I like to knock out of the master builders and HIA, a bit of it. But remember, you both have to agree on it.
But you've got your favourites that you like to get rid of.
Yeah, and there's 1 or 2 clauses that appear sometimes that financiers won't accept. So either it gets knocked out or the builder's out.
Oh, interesting. Okay, Bob, what about that didn't come up in the last podcast. That I didn't know you had some
If I
stock
told
standards.
everything I know, it'd be a 40-year-long podcast.
It would be.
You see, so I can't bring out everything in a podcast.
Can't shoot all your bullets. I've learned a few things about you today, Bob. Yeah, yes, they are.
I like to keep you thinking.
You do, keep me on my toes. So what about on-site management and quality control? That being part of the, managing this process effectively?
Yeah. So during the construction phase, as a developer, you might like to visit the site. So look, typically, if you can, I mean, if you're developing in another state, you're going to have to work out something else with somebody else. But typically, if you're developing, within striking distance of where you are, you might go there. Look, once a week. If not much is happening this week, maybe you could skip a week, once a fortnight. But I like to go to site, meet the builder on site. There's a range of things that you do while you're there. And you might also have some conversations during the week. Like some things pop up, like what we call RFIs.
So, that came up in the last. It was. I've forgotten it already. It was an acronym I didn't know. The request for information.
Further information.
Request for
RFIs.
Information.
Yeah,
yes.
you get them from council too when you're getting a DA. Same things. But
Love a good
the
acronym.
council might need something from you during the week. He's got an issue he wants to talk to you about, or there's a design thing come up, not enough detail. He's asking you, can you get the architect to detail this section up a bit? The plans aren't detailed enough in this area, whatever it is. So there'd be a few calls during the week, no doubt. But let's say go to site and have a meeting. And look, in terms of the quality of the work, particularly if you're starting out, you might want a building inspector to inspect it at certain stages during construction. And look, it doesn't cost a lot, but it might be a good thing until you get to know better. So you're not going to walk all over the building and have a look at every stud and every nog and, bring out your spirit level and and away you go,
Did you do that in the early days?
No, that was too much. I had a good walk around the building and looked at the site and everything, but I'm just saying for new people, and like that YouTube thing I talked about before, he's actually a building inspector. But what he does, he videos all the bad stuff he sees. Obviously, he doesn't video the good stuff. That'd be way too boring. So he videos the bad stuff. And but they can check on that quality for you. That's the good thing about property development is there's always an expert at every stage. If you're lacking experience, you want to lean on it. But the whole point is because you don't know what you don't know, you can't just
you don't know the question to ask.
No, and you don't know who to ask or what to get and what they should charge and everything else. So that's a push for educating yourself before you head out there. Don't fly by the seat of your pants and think you can work it out on the way. And that's an example.
Okay, so that's the on-site management, quality control. What about budget and timeline management, Bob? When it comes to managing this process effectively, how do you stick to budget? And how do you manage that timeline?
It's more for the builder to stick to budget, really, because the builder's doing the building for you. So you probably would have signed what we call a lump sum fixed price and time contract. That's what the financiers like. They like certainty. So it'll be a building contract for a particular amount of dollars and to be built in a particular amount of weeks, let's say. Fixed price and time contract. It can vary a little bit.
Is that an acronym yet? Is that a FP&T?
No.
No?
Well, you just made one up.
Oh,
we'll run with that.
Yeah. You heard it here first, folks. Get yourself an FP&T.
Yeah.
Sounds like a G&T.
So with the fixed price time contract, that's the dollar amount that the builder's agreed to build it for. Now, there's often some variations, but the minimum, the better. Might have hit a bit of rock digging the footings. It's cost another $1,500 to dig the rock out. There's a rock clause in the contract. The price just went up $1,500. The good news is, of course, when you've got a building contract, when you finance a project, the financier will insist on a 5% contingency. So even when you're doing your feasibilities, you always allow 5% of the construction price as a contingency factor. Valuers will put it in, financiers will put it in, they'll make it part of your loan. It's reality.
And the good news about that is?
It's there for,
But in all your experience,
at the end,
you found that on average, you only use 30% of it.
Yeah, that's what I've averaged out. So of the 5% you put aside for a rainy day to cover some, cost overruns or whatever happens, I use about 30% of it. So, like for instance, if your building contract's 1.5 million, 5% of that is 75,000. So you'd have 75,000 aside in a contingency. as a contingency, and that's part of your loan. You can't just grab it whenever you feel like it. You want to go on a holiday, buy a new boat, but better wait till you've done your development, got your profit before you go and buy your boat. But that's there if things go over. Like I gave an example before, you hit rock when you're doing the footings, cost $2,000, $3,000 extra. That can come out of the contingency account. That's what it's there for.
In fact, the other day when Alex Kempson had his demo happening and I happened to be nearby, so I went and filmed it for him because he lives in New South Wales and it was in Queensland. I was just very close. So as I walked through, and the demolition company, because they've seen me so many times, because we've had a few demos around here, the guy thinks he actually thought it's my development. He goes, "Oh, here she is, the boss is here," and I just thought I'll just play along. But he goes, "No, need to show you something." I said, he's like drags me down the back. "Now we've got the stuff in the ceiling here. It's going to cost extra." But the cool thing was that I was able to FaceTime Alex straight away and say, "Hey, Alex, there's going to be an extra here," and I just showed him what it was, and they said what the price would be, and Alex immediately was able to go, "Yeah, I'm fine with that," and that would have been straight out of contingency. And it was something that was answered immediately. It didn't have to go via the builder to do that. It was just all done, which was kind of, that was my most recent experience in using contingency. But on another note, I'm really excited because we've got a couple of rather big developments going on with our industrials. And if we've got a big contingency, that means we're going to have money left over that we can do fun stuff with.
Hopefully we've got money left over in the contingency account, which is usually the case. And so I often say to people, you can have your party at the end out of that. So the thing is, look, when you do your feasibility, your first feasibility, make sure it stacks up. You allow 5% of the construction price as a contingency. When you get your finance, it's in there. It's always there, but it's always assumed you spend it. Like when you do your feasibility with the 5% contingent, you assume you've spent it. When the financier lends you the funds, if they put aside this 5% contingency, they assume you're going to use it. Because if you get to the end, like that 75,000, let's say you've used 30,000 of it on the way through, you're more likely to spend more than less when you're doing a development. But that means if you spent 30, you got 45 left in there. So all of a sudden, although you haven't been thinking about it, your profit just went up 45,000 because every time you've ever done the numbers, the loan or anything, you've assumed you're spending the 75.
And I'll just add a wee clause there because some people get excited and think, oh, that would mean my development works. Remember, feasibilities matter because they're done for the financier. So the financier wouldn't count that as profit at all ever. So you can't assume that contingency on your FISO or inside your FISO is calculated as profit.
It's a cost.
It's a cost, yeah.
Yeah, it's only if there's some left at the end of the project.
It's a bonus.
Yeah, it's actually undrawn loan. So that 75,000 I mentioned is part of your loan. But if you only use 30 of it, there's $45,000 left of the loan that you didn't draw down. It's basically profit that you sort of hadn't counted on. And you might grab, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 of that and throw a big party for everybody who's been involved in your project. How lavish you are is up to you. Could be pig on the spit, invite the builder and various people around. I always like that contingency account for a little bit of a party to come out of there. But anyway, getting off the subject. But that's always there for the rainy day.
Then, Bob, what about time management when it comes to the developer with the time management?
Well, during construction, it's the builder that needs to stick to time. And there's often penalties if they go over. Depends on the type of building contract. If it's just a house or something small, you have what we tend to call residential contracts. And they're relatively small contracts, not too heavy. And when you get a little bit bigger project, maybe, even some duplex, but like 3 or 4 townhouses or more, it becomes more of a commercial contract. It has more conditions. It's a thicker contract. And you have some things in the commercial contract that aren't in the residential contract as well. So, things like liquidated damages, without getting too much into contracts, liquidated damages are often in a commercial contract, but often not in like a house contract. And that's the amount of money a builder has to pay you when they go over time. So much a day for every day over time they are, but you often won't find those in little resi contracts and the like. So, yeah, so that sort of contract administration, which, as a developer you can do yourself, but it's up to the builder to finish on time or ahead of time. Even better for both of us if he finishes ahead of time.
So, Bob, you have spoken before about builders that have been cheeky and asked for a credit or for a bit of a bonus if they finish early. And I know that's happened to you on numerous occasions. What's your response to that?
Yeah, well, that is true. It hasn't happened very often, but I have had builders, let's say you're doing a 30-week contract, and they say, well, look, if we can do it quicker than the 30, can we get a bonus? If we do it for every week we finish under 30, can we get X dollars even, I say, well, that'd be lovely. Because there might be a liquidated damages clause that says for every week over 30, they have to pay something. So they're countering that. And they're saying, well, yeah, that's okay. If I go overtime, I have to pay you. What about if I go undertime? How about a bit of a bonus, just to balance the books? And for me, I say to them, look, if you finish early, it's better for you too. Like if you're getting paid, $1.5 million for your contract, and it's a 10-month contract, and you finish in 8, you're in front, because now you've got 10 months worth of money in 8 months. So you got it ahead of time. And now you can move into other jobs. And every job you finish early, you can fit in more jobs. So it's actually good for you to finish early. It's good for me because I save some interest by doing the build in 8 months and not 10. But it's good for you too. So, as long as you do it in 30, I'm happy. But if you do it less than that, we'll both be happy.
Yeah, it's a bonus. Yeah, go for gold. So the last one, Bob, final handover and completion. What needs to be managed there to make sure this whole process goes smoothly?
Okay, so the builder's finished his contract. They reach what they call practical completion. It's a legal term in contracts. It's when the builder's done everything they had to do under the terms of their contract. Obviously, they're going to put their hand up now. Pay me my final payment, please. But it's also the time when you would go through and check for any defects. And we normally send a professional people through and list up those defects, and the builder has to fix those defects. And then he gets paid, right? So he gets his final payment. If it's a commercial loan, the quantity surveyor will make sure everything's been done. And the builder can be paid, and the builder can leave and do whatever else builders do. So they're out of there. And for you, you've reached practical completion. There's a few little things to tidy up there. You've got to get a certificate of occupancy, or sometimes called a certificate of classification as well. That means people can actually live in it. And then you've got, you've got the certifier, or the building surveyor will organise that. So there's people that organise these things for you. You just have to be aware of that they need organising and who does it.
In fact, that brings me to when we finished our last duplex, because I felt very involved or very attached to the whole practical completion, walkthrough, handovers, turning up and all of that stuff, and walking through, noticing that needs fixing, that needs fixing, that needs fixing. And I think when you are the developer, you do get a little bit attached to it if you get to walk through it, because I didn't do that in my development over in WA. I didn't even see it for a year after it was finished, but I enjoyed that process. But what happened, and we have talked about it on another podcast, was there was a mix-up with the builder not getting the cleaning. The cleaning wasn't done before handovers went through, and it got a bit messy because the people came to stage it. And that was this is a really good point when it comes to communication, because the builder had been sick. So his team was still there, but he was actually very sick for a few days, some sort of influenza type situation. And that you're talking about the process happening because you know all the right people. The ball got dropped there.
Yeah, the builder had a couple of subcontractors who were finishing things off. Remember, around the pool, I think there was something happening there as well. And because he wasn't on site and sort of operating from home, and he set certain days when people were going to do certain things, but then they didn't do it, and he wasn't there, so he didn't know. And the cleaners were booked. Remember, we had a display coming up, open for display the first day of marketing, coming up the following weekend. And so that was booked. Everything was booked. Staging was booked. Cleaners working backwards. And because a couple of things didn't happen, just threw everything out. And I remember we had to push the marketing back another week. And then when we thought the cleaners had been there, they hadn't been there. And you had a look and you thought, these cleaners are terrible. They haven't done it well.
I was like, there's no way cleaners have been through here. This is disgusting. This is a man clean. Sorry. It was just terrible.
I can do better than that.
Yeah, it wasn't great. But it was obvious, along the top of the light shades, you could see all the dust from sanding, and all of that sort of stuff was there, and marks on the beautiful bench tops. So that's that final handover and compliance, and then just making sure that all of that stuff happens well. And as with every development, there's always going to be hiccups. I mean, that was probably the worst thing that happened for us, and it was minor, really. Oh no, actually, when we were when we did the demo, we found a swimming pool at the back. So it just goes to show there's always going to be something, and it's how you work through that. Or as long as you are, I mean, we couldn't have known about the swimming pool. Could we have found out?
No, we couldn't have. We did have soil tests done, but that's where the building goes, where they test the ground for the type of soil, and then the engineers can design the right footings. This was not where the building went, obviously swimming pool, and it had been filled in. Nobody knew. It must have been filled in 10 years ago at least, and so the excavator guy found it. And, we had to dig it out. It cost $10,000.
So and that's all part of that contingency. So there's always going to be something, and if you can keep those things as small as possible by knowing what you're doing. And if you think about it, that'll happen to us, and we know what we're doing. So imagine if you don't quite know what you're doing, it can be really messy. So Bob, I think that's enough today. Only because this is take 2. But I think we could summarize this into great communication, understanding what you need to know, and just being on top of things, inspecting what needs to be inspecting, and really just staying on top of things, I think would be the takeaway. Have you got any other takeaways?
Not really, but that whole process, I suppose, is like get the detailed plans right at the beginning. Don't go in thinking you're going to muck around, change things on the way. Don't change anything on the way if you can. If you can do that. Choose the right builder, all those basic things, and just take responsibility for it. And don't assume too much. That's the thing with us, isn't it? I think it started that day when we assumed the builder was going to do all these things and everything was going to work out. So we booked the advertise, and it didn't. We assumed something that would have happened that didn't happen.
Yeah, because he said he'd do it, but because he was sick, we just didn't get that feedback.
No.
Yeah, and it was a minor thing. But it just happened to be lucky that I happened to call in there and have a look around, because it probably could have got a bit messy otherwise.
So don't just assume too much. Check.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think that's the end of our episode 201. Hope you've learned something fabulous from this episode. Reminder that Tuesday lunchtime is the free event. That's Tuesday the 18th of May. I hope you can make that, 12 o'clock. That's Australia Eastern time. I think that's what we call
Australian Eastern Standard Time now that there's no daylight saving.
Australian Eastern Standard Time. Crikey. But anyway, we'd love to see you there, and we've told you of other things we have coming up. If you want to learn more about managing the construction process effectively, it's actually going to be one of the free lunchtime events, but not till October. But I'm sure you've learned a lot today, and we'll look forward to catching up with you another time. Bye.
Bye.